Welcome back to It's Haunted, What Now? I'm your host, Lainey. Humans, eh? Always craving company like a ghost at a séance. We're social creatures, whether we're swapping ghost stories around a campfire or virtually through the eerie glow of our screens. We cling to connections like a paranormal investigator clings to their EMF meter, desperate for validation that we're not just howling at the moon alone. But fear not, for in today's spine-tingling tales, our protagonists aren't howling solo into the void. No, they've got company for their hair-raising escapades. Someone to give that reassuring nod and say, "Hey, you're not the only one seeing things that go bump in the night." So, gather round, buckle up, and prepare to be haunted by the inexplicable. Okay, ready to get spooked? Our first story is told by Spicy Leaf or Spicy Leaf, whose brother had one of those home, not-so-alone experiences. I was at my mom's house today, and my brother was supposed to come meet us. He ended up being an hour late, and when he arrived, he told us this story that I can't wrap my head around. Basically, he was on the phone with my boyfriend, talking about video games and whatnot, when he heard loud knocks at his front door. He has 3 dogs that start barking like crazy at the door, and even my boyfriend heard them barking. So my brother said he, of course, goes to the door and looks out the peephole. He claims to have seen a short older woman with long gray hair that covered most of her face. He also explained that she looked like she was hunched over and was rubbing her hands together. He originally thought it was my mom, who was with me the entire time, may I remind you, but then did a double take and knew it definitely wasn't our mother. He then opened the door and no one was there. No one would be able to run away in time with the layout of his house, especially an older woman. He even stepped outside and couldn't see or hear anything out of the ordinary. He checked his front doorbell camera and the cameras around the outside of his house, and there is no footage of anyone but him, let alone an older woman standing at the front door or being at the house in general. He is shrugging this off like it's nothing, but obviously he must have seen a ghost or is hallucinating. Has anyone experienced anything similar to this? And no, he's not making this up. My boyfriend says he was definitely freaked out on the phone. They both were. Alright, so I often ask why these things have to happen at home, at your sanctuary, at the safest place you can be. And honestly, I have a pakwa that's outside of my door, so I don't even think this would happen because all of these energies are not even welcome in my home, but my pakwa definitely turns them around and makes them confused. So sorry to my neighbors. It's probably where the ghosts are going. I always wonder, why can't this happen at Walmart or something else? Sure, there are plenty of other horrors to see at Walmart, but at least it's not ruining the relative safety and comfort of your own home. But I digress. Theoretically, your brother may have seen a night hag, which is known to appear when a person is asleep and give them nightmares while stealing their breath, essentially causing sleep paralysis. So I wonder if this night hag thought your brother was asleep and realized she was knocking at the wrong house. Sorry again to whoever she did visit later. The chip on your shoulder, no, not that one, the other one, tells us about the time they shared the same experience as their father, but 1 week apart. I live in the state of Ohio and have for the full 30 years I've been on this planet. My parents split when I was young and Mom moved to another house, but my father stayed in the house I grew up in, where he remains to this day. My pop is 70 years old and has yet to retire, so that big house of his remains an empty shell 50% of the time, unless me or any of my other 3 siblings drops by to check on things or just to visit. I happen to be the youngest of all the siblings, and I also have been much closer to my father than everyone else. He is a very old-school Italian who likes cigars and doing things his way, so I like to be around just in case he hurts himself doing upkeep or yard work. And we will typically sit on the back patio and smoke a cigar and just shoot the crap. Last week, while on the way home to my apartment, I received a call from my father around 7:30 p.m., which isn't out of the ordinary, but it's what he said to me that scared me. "I'm just sitting on the couch. Why did you need me to come downstairs?" I asked what he was talking about, and he said, "You keep yelling for me to come down to the basement, but I don't want to get up if I don't need to." I told him that I hadn't been to the house at all that day, and was, in fact, 30 minutes away during the time he called me. I could hear him go from normal to something's off when he told me, "I know all my children's voices, and this was you yelling up at me, clear as day." I decided to then drop by the house instead of going to my apartment, and we walked through the whole place. He was telling me, "I know I'm 70, but I wasn't just an old man hearing things that aren't there," which I believed wasn't the case either and assured him of that. So I left after clearing the entire property inside and out, and had no more incidents for a few more days. My father calls me around 5 p.m. the following Saturday and asked if I could go to the house to turn on the sprinklers since he got stuck at work, so I obliged and went to the house. When you turn the sprinklers on at the house, you have to manually hit a switch for each section to turn on once one finishes. So I plop my butt down on the sofa in between sprinkler sections and watch a little TV. I've been on the sofa for a total of about 45 minutes when I hear a voice vibrating the air vents and coming from the basement's entertainment area. Unsure who or what was being said, I sat up and muted the TV before something else was said so I could hear it. I definitely heard my mother's voice, clear as day, come from the basement, which kept saying the same basic phrase. "Can you come down here?" It would be rewarded every time with the same goal, which was for me to come downstairs. My parents have been divorced since 2006. It wasn't a nice divorce and was long and drawn out. My mother hasn't spoken to my father since then, and I can guarantee you that my mom hasn't stepped foot inside that house since 2006 either. What in the actual hell is going on? I didn't go downstairs when the voice was asking me to. A feeling of horrible dread came over me, and I left the house and locked up. I just sat in the driveway waiting for my father to get home so I could share with him what just occurred. I tried to get him not to go inside for the night, but I wasn't successful. He just said F it to whatever is happening and is intent on ignoring it if it happens again. Can someone please tell me possible explanations of what happened? As usual, I don't have any concrete answers for what that was, but I can definitely tell you whatever it was had some nefarious plans. I'm not joking when I said, as I'm reading this, of course, in the dark, because I like to be scared just as much as you like to be scared, which hopefully is a lot because you're listening to this show. But I definitely got chills when your dad suddenly got very serious and said he knew what his children sounded like. And again, I hearken back to when you're in the shower as a mom, taking a bath, and you hear screams, cries, and you're like, that's my kid. And you get out and everybody's fine and everything's okay. So could it be a trick of the mind? Sure. But it happened to 2 separate people on 2 separate occasions a week apart. And just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it brings to mind a mimic, but I don't know, maybe it's worth doing a little clearing, if you know what I mean. But also, let us know if your dad's idea to tell this entity to F off works, for science. The next story comes from Fallen Saint, who chills us with tales from the prison. So, I have had several supernatural experiences and figured I would share some that have stood out. I worked as an officer at a prison, and although I have moved to a new facility, I have been an officer for the past 12 years. One of the major skills I have learned is how to retain and recall details which help recount events I witness. This makes report writing much easier and is helping me recount these events here. The prison I worked at was the oldest operational in my state and was built in the 1870s in an old style with a big brick wall that runs the prison's perimeter. The place has been updated over the years, but some areas that still operated had little done to them since it was built. When I started, the old heads told all of us that the place was haunted, given everyone who had died over the years. Different places more than others, like the old unit that was a segregation, or what some people might know as the hole, with all the prison graffiti. I never gave it much thought, because if I do not experience it, then it is just a cool story, but not confirmed. So the first experience. I worked there for 8 months when I first saw something strange. I was working overtime at night on what's called a one-on-one, where you have to watch a prisoner who is feeling suicidal and to make sure he doesn't harm himself. It meant that I needed to stay up all night and check to make sure the prisoner was breathing every 15 minutes, and I had a partner who walked by every 28 minutes, so I knew I was awake. It was about 2 a.m., and I had just used my flashlight to illuminate the cell of the prisoner I was watching and confirm that he was breathing. I looked down to mark the check on my clipboard when I saw movement out of the corner of my eyes. My partner had just done his round 15 minutes prior, and all the prisoners were supposed to be locked in their cells, so there shouldn't be any movement down there. I turn and see someone doing a round on the housing unit, but he isn't right. The guy is wearing a blue uniform with a Breton cap, a shiny black leather belt, and has a baton in his hand. The problem is that these uniforms haven't been used by my department since the 1950s, and our uniforms are not blue. They are gray and modern, whereas this one was old. I watched this guy walk down the unit for maybe 5 seconds, and then I shook my head and slapped my face to make sure I was awake. When I looked back, there wasn't anyone there. My second experience. This one happened roughly 2 years later during my normal shift. The central building of the prison I worked in is a big room called a rotunda. It has 2 floors but is open so you can see the balcony up on the top levels, and anyone who is leaving the rotunda can be seen from the opposite side, even on the balcony. The doors into the wings that branch off of the balcony all have windows, and most of the rooms directly connected also have windows. It was 9 p.m. and I was going to the rotunda to complete some paperwork with a coworker for my sergeant, which is common. As we were opening the open-barred gate to go into the rotunda, I looked up and noticed that the administrative wing's lights appeared to be dimmed through the door's window. I commented to my coworker that we would need to report a light was out in the administrative wing. It was then, as we were both looking at the window, that we observed something move in the window, and we realized that this was not a light malfunction. A shadow person was standing in front of the window. While we were watching this shadow move to its left and through a solid wall into another room, we saw its silhouette appear in the window of that room. We just looked at each other and kept going. Okay, now we normally wouldn't end things right there, leaving you hanging, but we are going to do that this episode. So keep an ear out for the next episode of It's Haunted What Now, when we'll spook you with more of Fallen Saint's prison officer experiences. We are so excited to get more information. But just talking about this and thinking about prisons and I visited Eastern State Penitentiary when I got married, go figure. And being in that place was so surreal. It's huge. It's also like in the middle of a very busy area of Philadelphia. And I just was so taken aback by the tours that were happening and being where people had lost their lives, either through prison violence or just by natural death or, through the death penalty, etc. And the energy in that place was just kind of heavy. I know that there's also a prison in Charleston, like the old Charleston jail, that my friend Mike Brown from Pleasing Terrorists has covered. And I loved hearing his live ghost tour when he did it. It was incredible. So highly recommend listening to that episode because the old Charleston jail is just creepy. But again, we're going to leave you hanging right here, so keep an ear out for the next episode of It's Haunted What Now? And we're going to spook you, like I said, with more of Fallen Spirits prison officer experiences. And for my Apple subscribers, you are also going to be getting 2 to 3 additional stories after the credits at the next episode, so stay tuned to hear the bonus stories. Well, that does it for this episode. If you'd like to submit your own personal spooky tale to be read on the show, head to hauntedpod.com and click on the link to submit your story. You can also email me, hauntedpod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a positive review on Apple Podcast or your podcast player of choice. It really does help. You can find us on Twitter, for now, at podcast_haunted, Instagram at It's Haunted What Now, or at hauntedpod.com. Production assistance by Jesse Hawk, writing assistance by Sherilyn Reyes. The official composer and audio smith for the show is Neeks at We Talk of Dreams. Check him out on Twitter at We Talk of Dreams or wetalkofdreams.com. Until next time. Did you hear that?